Don't you dare ring that up, Celine snapped, and the slap came so fast the credit card machine beeped in protest. The sound cracked through the Saturday noise of the mall like a dropped plate. Veronica's head snapped sideways. For half a second, she saw nothing but the bright red sale sign above Register 3. Her cheek burned. The baby inside her shifted hard, a sharp roll beneath her stretched maternity blouse. The line of customers froze. Anthony stood 3 feet away. He didn't move. Celine lowered her manicured hand slowly, as if she'd just flicked lint off a table instead of striking a 7-month pregnant woman. I told you, Celine said sweetly, adjusting her designer handbag, we don't want your cheap customer service. The mall hummed back to life in whispers. Veronica swallowed. Her ears rang. She could feel the child inside her again. Steady, stubborn, alive. Then something in her snapped clean in two. Her palm flew before her brain could stop it. The smack echoed louder than the first. Celine's head whipped sideways, hair flying, sunglasses clattering across the polished tile. The crowd gasped in stereo. A teenage boy near the pretzel stand muttered, "Oh snap." Veronica's voice came out low and steady, surprising even herself. "Go ahead," she said quietly. "Slap me again. Let my baby feel it too." Silence. Anthony finally found his voice. "Veronica, what are you doing?" he hissed. "What am I doing?" She stared at him. "What am I doing?" she repeated louder. "I'm working, Anthony. Something you suggested when our savings disappeared." A few people in line exchanged looks. Celine blinked, stunned more by the slap than the accusation. "You're insane," she spat. "You can't assault me. Do you even know who I am?" Veronica let out a shaky laugh that bordered on hysteria. "Today, you're the woman who hit a pregnant cashier over a handbag." An older woman in line leaned on her cane and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Honey, I've waited 30 years to see that." A ripple of nervous laughter broke the tension. Celine's face flushed crimson. "Anthony, are you going to let her talk to me like that?" Anthony ran a hand through his hair, avoiding eye contact with everyone. "Veronica, just apologize. You're making a scene. Apologize." The word landed heavier than the slap. Apologize for being hit. Apologize for existing. Apologize for working while pregnant because your husband drained your joint account and moved into a downtown apartment with the woman who just struck you. Veronica felt something shift inside her. Not the baby this time, but the part of her that used to stay quiet to keep the peace. "No," she said. Security radios crackled somewhere behind the perfume counter. Celine straightened, regaining her composure like someone slipping back into a costume. "You're finished here. I'll have you fired before your shift ends." "I'd love to see that," Veronica replied. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline mixing with fear. She pressed one palm lightly to her belly. The baby kicked back, almost as if in agreement. Security arrived, 2 men in navy blazers moving quickly, eyes scanning faces. "What seems to be the problem?" one asked. Celine stepped forward first. "She assaulted me. I want her removed. Immediately." The guard turned to Veronica. "Ma'am." Before Veronica could answer, the older woman in line barked. "She slapped that girl first. In front of guard and clearance handbags." Another shopper lifted her phone. "I got it on video." Anthony's face drained of color. Celine's jaw tightened. "You people have no idea who you're interfering with." The guard's radio buzzed again. He pressed a finger to his earpiece. "Yes, sir. Yes. I understand." He looked at Celine, and for the first time, his posture changed. Straighter. More cautious. "Miss Lawson," he said carefully, "your father is on his way." The name hit like a dropped tray. A few shoppers inhaled sharply. Veronica blinked. "Lawson. As in Robert Lawson? Owner of the entire Lawson Plaza Mall." Celine's lips curved into a slow smile. "You're in so much trouble," she whispered to Veronica. Anthony finally stepped forward, lowering his voice urgently. Veronica, just drop it. You know how powerful her family is. There it was. Not are you okay? Not did she hurt you. Power. Veronica felt the sting on her cheek again. Hotter now, but cleaner somehow. Power, she said softly. You think power is what matters right now? Her voice wavered for the first time. The baby shifted again, a small reminder of why she was still standing. If you've ever had someone stand next to you while you were being humiliated and do nothing, she said, eyes locked on Anthony, you know that silence hurts worse than a slap. The mall had gone completely quiet now. Even the fountain seemed to hush. Celine folded her arms. You're being dramatic. 7 months pregnant, the older woman muttered. And she's the dramatic one. Anthony leaned closer. Veronica, please. Don't drag this out. Drag this out. She almost laughed again. You dragged it out, she said. When you drained our account. When you stopped coming home. When you told me I was too emotional for noticing. Celine scoffed. Oh my God, are we doing this here? Yes, Veronica said. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Security shifted uncomfortably. One of them cleared his throat. Everyone, please remain calm. Mr. Lawson will be here momentarily. Celine's confidence bloomed visibly. She adjusted her blouse, smoothed her hair, and shot Veronica a look of pure satisfaction. You should have stayed quiet, she murmured. That's what wives like you are good at. Wives like you. Veronica felt something fragile inside her finally hardened. I stayed quiet for 3 months, she said. I worked double shifts while throwing up in the stockroom. I clipped coupons while you were flying to Miami. I stayed quiet while he told me I was imagining things. Her voice broke, just slightly, and she swallowed it down. If you've ever been told you're imagining the truth, she added, looking at no one and everyone at once, you know how crazy that makes you feel. The older woman in line wiped her eye discreetly. Celine rolled her eyes. Save the speech. My father doesn't tolerate scandals. A sleek black SUV pulled up outside the glass entrance. The mall doors parted. Conversations stopped. Even Celine straightened instinctively. Anthony stepped back. Veronica's breath caught in her throat. This was it. The cavalry, but not hers. Celine leaned closer, her voice syrupy and cruel. Watch how fast this ends. Veronica pressed her palm over her belly again. The baby kicked. Hard. She lifted her chin. Let it end, she said. Footsteps echoed across the tile. Heavy. Measured. Controlled. Security moved aside instantly. The crowd parted like a curtain being drawn back. Robert Lawson stepped inside. And he was not smiling. The glass doors slid open and every whisper in the mall seemed to pause. Robert Lawson didn't rush. He didn't have to. He walked in like a man who built the floors under everyone's feet. Gray suit. Silver hair. Silver hair. Calm eyes that had seen recessions, lawsuits, and men twice Anthony's size crumble across negotiation tables. Celine exhaled in relief. Daddy. She moved toward him like a child expecting rescue. Robert's eyes didn't leave Veronica. 7 months pregnant. One hand on the counter. The other bracing her belly. Pale. Shaking. The security team parted. Miss Lawson, the guard said carefully. Your father is here. Celine turned instantly fragile. Daddy, she assaulted me. She. Robert raised one hand. Silence. He walked past his daughter. Stopped in front of Veronica. His voice was steady. Did you strike a pregnant employee in my building? Celine blinked. She slapped me first. Veronica let out a breath that trembled. No. She told me not to ring up her items. I said I had to. She slapped me. Anthony cleared his throat. Sir, this is a misunderstanding. Robert didn't even look at him. "Play it," he said. The head of security hesitated only a second before pulling up the footage on a tablet. The crowd leaned in. There it was. Celine's hand is flying. The sharp crack. Veronica's head snapped to the side. The machine is beeping. The gasp. And then Veronica's reflexive slap back. The crowd murmured louder now. Celine's face drained. "That angle doesn't show what she said to me." Robert turned slowly toward her. "What did she say?" Celine opened her mouth. Closed it. She looked at me like. Like what? Like she judged me. An old woman near the jewelry kiosk cackled. "Honey, I haven't seen drama like this since 1984. And back then, we at least had shoulder pads." A ripple of nervous laughter spread. Even Veronica let out the smallest breath of air. Celine glared at the old woman. "This isn't funny." "No, sweetheart," the woman replied, adjusting her glasses. "It's not." Veronica swayed. Robert noticed immediately. "You're unwell," he said. "I'm fine," Veronica insisted, though her vision blurred. Anthony finally stepped forward, touching her elbow. Let's just go home." She flinched away from him. The movement was small, but Robert saw it. "Call medical," Robert ordered. Celine stepped closer to her father. "Daddy, she's exaggerating. She's trying to make me look bad." Robert's voice dropped colder than the marble beneath them. "You already look bad." The EMTs arrived faster than gossip could spread. One of them crouched beside Veronica. "Ma'am, I'm going to check your blood pressure." "I can't leave my register," Veronica whispered. "If I clock out early, they deduct." "You're not clocking out," Robert interrupted. She looked at him, confused. "You're on paid leave starting now." Celine's head snapped toward him. "What?" "You heard me. She hit me." Robert finally faced his daughter fully. "After you hit her." Celine's eyes filled with tears, strategic, controlled. "You always do this. You always take strangers' sides. You stopped being a child the moment you chose to humiliate someone weaker than you." The words landed heavily. Anthony tried again. "Sir, this is a family matter." Robert turned to him for the first time. "And you are?" Anthony straightened his shoulders. "Her husband." Robert's gaze sharpened. He looked at Veronica. At her swollen belly. At the faint, Anthony still reddening her cheek. Then back at Anthony. "No," Robert said quietly. "I don't believe you are." The air shifted. Anthony forced a laugh. "Excuse me." "A husband," Robert continued evenly, "does not stand beside another woman while his pregnant wife works a double shift." A murmur swept through the crowd. Celine's jaw tightened. "Daddy, stop." Robert ignored her. "You knew she was employed here?" Anthony hesitated. "Yes." "And you brought your mistress to shop in the store where your wife works?" Gasps. "Louder now." Celine hissed. "Don't call me that." Veronica closed her eyes. There it was. Out loud. Public. No more pretending. For a second, her knees buckled. The EMT caught her. Anthony's face burned red. "This isn't your business." Robert stepped closer, his voice lowering to something far more dangerous than shouting. "It became my business when my daughter assaulted a pregnant employee in my mall. It became my business when you used my property to stage whatever twisted display this is." Celine grabbed her father's arm. "He's leaving her. We're in love." Robert looked down at her hand gripping his sleeve. "Love," he repeated slowly, "does not start with cruelty." The old woman chimed in again, louder this time. "Amen to that." Veronica let out a shaky laugh through tears. "I'm sorry. This is just a lot." One of the EMTs handed her water. "Try to breathe for me." Anthony leaned in, whispering harshly, "You're embarrassing us." Veronica's head snapped toward him. Us, she whispered back. And something inside her cracked clean open. Tell me something, she said, louder now. When you emptied our savings, was that us? The crowd went silent. Celine blinked. What? Veronica's voice trembled but didn't break. When I found the bank account drained. When I had to pick up extra shifts. When I had to explain to my OB why I couldn't schedule certain tests yet. Was that us? Anthony hissed. Stop. No, Veronica said. Her eyes filled, but they burned now. If you've ever been made to feel small by the person who promised to protect you, don't look away right now. Don't tell me to be quiet. Don't tell me to save face. She looked directly at Anthony. You don't get to shame me for surviving what you broke. The words hit like a slap harder than the first one. Even Celine looked shaken. Robert's expression darkened. You drained their joint account? He asked. Anthony stammered. It's complicated. It's simple, Veronica said. He said he needed it for an investment. Celine's head turned slowly toward Anthony. Investment. Anthony's eyes flickered. Robert saw it. How much? Robert asked. Veronica swallowed. 43,000. Celine's fingers loosened from her father's sleeve. That's not what you told me, she whispered to Anthony. He avoided her eyes. Robert stepped back, studying the entire scene like a chessboard. You brought my daughter into this while you were still legally married, he said calmly. You paraded her in front of your pregnant wife. You allowed her to strike an employee. And you drained marital funds. Anthony's voice cracked. Sir, please. No, Robert said. The mall was no longer noisy. It was a courtroom. And you expect me, Robert continued slowly, to believe you are her husband? Anthony's jaw tightened. I am. Robert tilted his head. A husband, he said, voice low and cutting, protects. His eyes shifted to Veronica again. You look terrified of him. Veronica froze. Because it was true. Not of his fists. But of his indifference. His silence. His ability to stand still while she unraveled. Celine's voice trembled now. Anthony, you said she was unstable. You said she refused to work. Veronica laughed weakly. I've worked since I was 16. The old woman leaned toward another shopper. Men lie smoother than silk. Robert straightened. Security, he said evenly. Escort my daughter to my office. Celine's head snapped up. What? Daddy. We're not finished. She stared at him, betrayal flooding her face. Then she turned to Anthony. You said this would be handled. Anthony swallowed hard. The EMT finished checking Veronica's vitals. Your blood pressure's elevated. You need rest. Robert nodded. My car will take her home. Anthony stepped forward. I'll take my wife. Robert's eyes turned to steel. No, he said. The word wasn't loud, but it landed like a verdict. Veronica looked between them. Her husband. And the stranger who seemed more outraged for her than the man she married. Robert took a step closer to Anthony. Until I understand exactly what you've done, he said quietly, you will not go anywhere near her alone. Anthony's face drained. That's insane. Robert held his gaze. Is it? Silence. Celine's voice broke from across the lobby. Daddy, what are you doing? Robert didn't look at her. He kept staring at Anthony. And then he said something that made the air disappear from the room. Because if the financial records show what I think they will. He paused. His eyes sharpened. I won't just question whether you're her husband. He stepped closer. I'll question what else you've been hiding. The parking lot air was thick and metallic, like a storm that hadn't decided whether to break. Veronica sat in the back of Robert Lawson's town car, one hand pressed to her stomach, the other gripping the edge of the seat as if the world might tilt again. Robert stood outside the open door, finishing a call with someone from corporate security. Anthony was 20 feet away, arguing with a guard. "I have rights," Anthony snapped. "She's my wife." The guard didn't flinch. "Sir, the owner asked you to step back." Owner. The word hit differently now. Inside the car, Veronica let out a shaky breath. Her phone buzzed. She stared at the screen. Unknown number. She ignored it. Robert leaned down slightly. "The EMT says you're stable, but I'd prefer you see your OB today." "I can't afford an emergency visit," Veronica said automatically. Robert's jaw tightened. "That won't be your concern." She hesitated. "Why are you helping me?" He didn't answer immediately. Because across the pavement, Celine's voice rose. "You told me it was finalized," she shouted at Anthony. "It is," Anthony shot back. Veronica's head lifted slowly. "Finalized." Robert noticed. "What does she mean?" he asked quietly. Veronica swallowed. Her voice was calm now. Too calm. "He filed separation papers 3 weeks ago." Robert's eyes sharpened. "And you?" "I was served at work," she said. "In front of customers." The humiliation didn't tremble in her voice. It hardened. Anthony heard that part. "Because you wouldn't sign," he yelled toward the car. Robert stepped between them. "You served divorce papers to your pregnant wife at her workplace?" Robert asked, disbelief layered under fury. "It's not illegal," Anthony muttered. "No," Robert said softly. "Just cowardly." Celine froze. She looked at Anthony like she was seeing him for the first time. "You said she knew. You said you two agreed." Veronica let out a dry laugh from the back seat. "We didn't agree." She pushed the car door open herself and stepped out carefully despite Robert's protest. "I found out when the bank texted me," she continued. $43,000 transferred out. I thought it was fraud." Anthony's face darkened. "Don't do this." "I went to the bank," Veronica said, ignoring him. "They told me it was authorized. By my husband." Celine stepped back slightly. "That was for the new place," she whispered to Anthony. Veronica's eyes flicked to her. "The apartment." Celine's silence was answer enough. Robert's head turned slowly toward Anthony. "You moved her in." Anthony ran a hand through his hair. "We were separated." "You were married," Veronica corrected. The wind picked up, catching a loose strand of her hair across her face. She didn't brush it away. "I found the lease in his glove compartment," she continued. "Signed 2 months ago." Celine's lips parted. 2 months. Anthony's voice sharpened. "Stop twisting things." Veronica's composure cracked for the first time. "I wasn't twisting anything," she said, her voice rising. "I was surviving it." She looked at Robert. "I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't throw his clothes out the window." She turned back to Anthony. "I picked up extra shifts." Her hand trembled as she placed it back on her belly. "I kept working because I needed health insurance. I needed stability. I needed time." Her voice broke now. "I wasn't begging him to stay." Silence swallowed the parking lot. "I was buying time." The words landed heavily. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just real. An older woman who had followed the commotion outside wiped at her eyes. "Lord," she whispered. "How many of us did that once?" Veronica looked at her. And for a second, decades folded into one moment. Young women who stayed quiet, who calculated, who planned exits in silence while pretending everything was fine. If you've ever smiled in public while your world was collapsing in private, don't let anyone tell you that was weakness. That was a strategy. That was survival. Anthony scoffed. "You're acting as if I abused you." Veronica's head snapped toward him. "You emptied our account while I was pregnant." "That was my money too. And my safety," she shot back. Celine's breathing grew shallow. You said she didn't work, she whispered to Anthony. I said she barely. I worked double shifts, Veronica cut in. 7 months pregnant. Celine's eyes filled with something new. Not jealousy. Not superiority. Doubt. Robert turned slightly away from the chaos and looked at Veronica. And something in his posture shifted. Less businessman. More father. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. Veronica blinked. For what? For raising a daughter who thought humiliation was power. Celine flinched. Dad. No, Robert said gently but firmly. This isn't about pride anymore. He looked back at Veronica. You should never have endured this in my building. Emotion rose unexpectedly in her chest. She wasn't used to apologies. Especially not from powerful men. It's not your fault, she said. Robert gave a small, pained smile. It becomes my responsibility when harm is done under my roof. Anthony stepped forward again, desperation creeping in. Sir, this is a private marital issue. You're making it public. Robert's expression hardened. You made it public when you served her at her register. Celine hugged herself now, staring at Anthony. You told me the divorce was mutual. It will be, Anthony snapped. Once she signs. Veronica let out a hollow laugh. You mean once I give up everything quietly? You don't have anything, Anthony shot back. The cruelty in his tone echoed. And this time, even Celine recoiled. Veronica went still. You're right, she said softly. Anthony blinked, surprised. I don't have the apartment. I don't have the savings. She stepped closer. But I have documentation. His face flickered. Robert noticed. Documentation, he repeated. Veronica held his gaze. I went to a lawyer 2 weeks ago. Anthony's composure cracked. You what? I wasn't begging you to stay, she said again, firmer now. I was buying time. Celine looked between them like the floor was dissolving. What lawyer? Anthony demanded. Veronica didn't answer him. Instead, she looked at Robert. I didn't tell him, she said quietly. Because I needed him comfortable. Anthony's stomach dropped visibly. Comfortable, he repeated. Comfortable enough, she continued, to keep using the joint credit card. Celine's eyes widened. Robert's voice lowered dangerously. How much? Veronica swallowed. More than the savings. Anthony exploded. You set me up. Veronica's laugh was sharp this time. No. I documented you. The wind felt colder. Robert's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. Legal department. He answered. Yes. His expression shifted slowly as he listened. From anger. To confusion. To something heavier. Repeat that, he said quietly. Anthony's jaw tightened. Celine's breathing quickened. Veronica felt her pulse in her throat. Robert ended the call slowly. No one spoke. Finally, Anthony forced a smirk. What now? Robert looked at him. Then at Veronica. Then at his daughter. And he said carefully, there's a prenup issue. Silence. Veronica frowned. Prenup. Celine's face drained completely. Anthony's confidence evaporated in real time. Robert's eyes stayed locked on Anthony. It appears, he said slowly, the apartment lease isn't the only document signed 2 months ago. The wind whipped harder. Celine whispered. Anthony, what did you sign? Anthony didn't answer. Because for the first time, he looked afraid. Anthony tried to recover first. He forced a laugh that didn't quite land. There is no prenup. We don't even have assets worth protecting. Robert didn't blink. That's what concerns me. Celine stepped closer to her father. Daddy, what is going on? Robert looked at Veronica instead. What's your maiden name? The question caught her off guard. Anderson. His eyes sharpened. Anderson, from Westbrook County? Veronica frowned. Yes. My grandmother owned farmland there. Why? Robert exhaled slowly, like a puzzle piece had just snapped into place. What was her name? Matilda Anderson. The reaction was immediate. Robert's posture changed, not with anger this time, but recognition. Matilda Anderson, he repeated, almost to himself. Anthony rolled his eyes. Can we not turn this into Ancestry Hour? Robert ignored him. To you, he said to Veronica, that land was probably just soil. To me, it was oxygen. Veronica stared at him. I don't understand. Robert turned to the small crowd that had grown instead of dispersed. He didn't raise his voice, but everyone leaned in. 27 years ago, I was weeks away from losing everything. The first version of this mall had filed for bankruptcy. Banks wouldn't extend credit. Investors pulled out. Celine blinked. You never told me that. Robert's mouth curved slightly. You were 5. He looked back at Veronica. There was a land deal. A last-minute expansion opportunity that would allow us to secure anchor tenants. The only adjacent parcel available belonged to Matilda Anderson. Veronica's heart skipped. My grandmother sold it, she said slowly. Robert nodded. At half market value. Anthony scoffed. That's irrelevant. It kept 312 employees from losing their jobs, Robert replied calmly. Including single mothers. Including elderly workers close to retirement. Including people who would have been devastated. Veronica felt the ground tilt again, not from stress, but from realization. She never told us that, she whispered. She wouldn't have, Robert said. She made me promise never to publicize it. Celine's face was pale now. Wait, are you saying? I'm saying, Robert interrupted gently. This mall expansion you were so proud to shop in today? It exists in part because of her family. Silence wrapped tight around the moment. The old woman from earlier gasped. Well, I'll be. Anthony's jaw clenched. So what? That doesn't change anything legally. Robert turned toward him slowly. It might. Veronica's thoughts raced. What does this have to do with a prenup? Robert held her gaze. 2 months ago, when this expansion entered Phase 3, new shareholder agreements were filed. One clause was triggered by historical land contributors. Veronica stared at him. I don't own anything here. Robert's voice softened. You might. Anthony's composure cracked visibly. That's impossible. Robert pulled out his phone again, opening an email forwarded from legal. Matilda Anderson negotiated a dormant equity clause. In the event of future expansion beyond the original footprint, a fractional percentage would revert to her direct descendants. Veronica shook her head. No, that can't be right. Celine's eyes darted between them. You mean she? Yes, Robert said evenly. Your grandmother didn't just sell land. She invested in us. The crowd murmured again. Anthony's face went gray. How much? He demanded. Robert looked at him like one might look at something unpleasant stuck to a shoe. Enough. Veronica's hands began to tremble. I had no idea. Robert studied her carefully. I believe you. Anthony stepped forward, panic surfacing. She can't claim anything. We're married. That would be marital property. Veronica's eyes snapped to him. That's why you filed separation papers so fast, she realized. Anthony's silence was a confession. Celine turned slowly toward him. You knew. He snapped defensively. I suspected. Robert's voice went cold again. You suspected your pregnant wife had a potential equity claim and rushed to separate finances. It's a legal strategy. Anthony shouted. It's predatory, Robert corrected. Veronica felt something shift inside her, Not just anger now. Clarity. You weren't building a new life, she said quietly to Anthony. You were hedging your bets. He opened his mouth, closed it. And in that pause, the truth roared louder than any denial. Celine stepped back like she'd touched fire. You told me you were broke. I am, he shot back. Robert let out a dry breath. You were positioning yourself. The old woman leaned toward another shopper again. Men will chase 2 rabbits and swear they're fasting. A few people snorted despite the tension. Veronica let out a shaky laugh through tears. The absurdity almost made it bearable. She looked at Robert. I don't want his money. Robert's gaze sharpened. It's not his. She swallowed hard. If you've ever been made to feel like you brought nothing into a marriage, like your family's sacrifices meant nothing, remember this moment. Subscribe, because sometimes the quiet women carried more legacy than the loud men ever will. Anthony's voice cracked. You're all acting like I committed a crime. You drained joint funds while aware of a pending asset reclassification, Robert said calmly. That's at minimum unethical. Possibly fraudulent depending on timing. Celine's eyes filled, not with performance now, but humiliation. You used me, she whispered. Anthony rounded on her. Don't start. She flinched. And Robert saw that too. His jaw tightened. You see loyalty as weakness, he said to Anthony. That's your flaw. He turned to Veronica. And you see endurance as duty. That was yours. Veronica's eyes filled again. Not from hurt this time. From being seen. I stayed because I thought stability mattered, she said softly. It does, Robert replied. But not at the cost of dignity. The wind picked up again, lifting strands of her hair. Anthony was unraveling now. This is ridiculous. She doesn't even know how business works. Robert's voice cut clean through him. She understood survival well enough to document you. Anthony's breathing grew erratic. Celine's anger finally snapped back into place. So what now? You're going to hand her part of the mall. Robert didn't hesitate. If the clause is valid, yes. Celine stared at him as he'd betrayed her. You're choosing her? Robert's expression didn't waver. I'm choosing what's right. Veronica felt dizzy again, but not from fear. From the weight of it all. Her grandmother. The land. The quiet sacrifice that echoed decades later. Robert turned slightly, projecting his voice just enough for the growing crowd and security staff to hear. Effective immediately, he said clearly. Miss Anderson is under my personal protection. The words hung in the air. Anthony stiffened. Celine's face flushed deep red. You're choosing her, she exploded. Robert's eyes didn't leave his daughter. I'm choosing integrity. Celine's voice broke. Over your own child? Robert's answer was soft and devastating. Over cruelty. Anthony stepped back slowly, calculating again, searching for another angle. Veronica felt the shift, too. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because Anthony wasn't the kind of man who walked away quietly. And as Robert's phone buzzed again, this time with a message that made his expression darken further, Veronica realized something chilling. Anthony hadn't been the only one watching the numbers. Anthony's phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. Then vibrated non-stop. He pulled it out, irritated. What now? His face drained as he stared at the screen. Your corporate access has been revoked. He looked up sharply. Robert didn't flinch. You used mall funds to secure vendor contracts through your consulting firm. That's standard practice. Not when you falsify spousal financial disclosure to qualify. Celine blinked. What? Robert nodded slightly toward security. The guard stepped forward. Sir, your building access badge has been deactivated. Anthony laughed nervously. You can't just. The guard held up the scanner. Anthony's badge flashed red. Access denied. The small electronic beep echoed louder than the slap earlier. A few people in the crowd actually clapped. Anthony's composure cracked. This is retaliation. This is a consequence, Robert replied. Celine's phone chimed. She checked it casually, then froze. Her expression shifted from irritation to confusion, to panic. My card just declined. No one answered her. She tried another. Declined. Daddy. Robert's voice was steady. Your discretionary accounts are temporarily suspended pending review. You froze my cards. In public. You leveraged family credit for personal entanglements that created liability. Celine stared at him as if she'd never known this man. This is insane. An older cashier who had clocked out but stayed for the spectacle leaned toward Veronica and muttered loudly, "Honey, men age like milk. We age like bourbon." Even Veronica let out a weak laugh. Celine shot the woman a glare. The woman shrugged. I've been married twice. I brought receipts both times. Anthony stepped forward, voice rising. You're humiliating us. Robert's eyes hardened. No. You humiliated yourselves. Phones were everywhere now. Someone whispered, it's already online. Anthony's stomach dropped. What? A teenager turned his screen around. The slap. The footage. Veronica's words. Go ahead. Slap me again. Let my baby feel it too. The video had a caption already. Pregnant cashier stands up to cheating husband plus entitled mistress. Views are climbing in real time. Celine lunged toward the teen. Delete that. He stepped back. It's live. Anthony grabbed his own phone, scrolling frantically. Thousands of comments. Tagging. Speculating. Someone had already found his LinkedIn. Veronica saw his panic and felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction. Release. For months, she had carried this alone. Now it was visible. If you've ever been told to keep quiet to protect the family image, remember who benefits from your silence. It's rarely you. Celine's breathing turned shallow. Daddy, fix this. Robert didn't soften. You embarrassed this family. The words were sharp. Public. Unfiltered. Celine recoiled like she'd been struck. You're disowning me? Over her. I am holding you accountable, he corrected. In front of strangers. In front of witnesses. Anthony's anger boiled over. You think this makes you noble? Robert stepped closer, voice low. No. I think it makes me responsible. Anthony tried another tactic, his voice dropping into something almost pleading. Veronica. Tell him to stop. This is spiraling. She looked at him for a long time. You didn't think it was spiraling when you served me papers at work. That was legal. So is this. Celine turned on Anthony fully now. You said none of this would trace back to us. Robert caught that. Trace, he repeated. Anthony's eyes widened. She doesn't know what she's saying. Celine's composure was shattered. You said the vendor transfers were clean. Robert's entire posture shifted. What transfers? Anthony's silence screamed. Robert turned to security. Have IT lock down vendor accounts immediately. Anthony stepped back, panic fully visible now. You're blowing this out of proportion. Robert's voice dropped to something lethal. Am I? Celine shook her head, realization dawning in horror. You used my name. Anthony snapped. It was temporary. Veronica watched it unfold like she was no longer inside the storm. The lies were collapsing under their own weight. The old cashier nudged her gently. You okay, sweetheart? Veronica nodded automatically, but then a sharp tightening gripped her abdomen. She inhaled sharply. Not now. She pressed her palm against her belly. Another wave. Stronger. Her breath caught. Robert noticed instantly. What is it? She swallowed. It's just stress. The pain came again. Deeper. Her knees buckled slightly. The old cashier grabbed her arm. That didn't look like stress. Anthony froze. For one split second, genuine fear crossed his face. Veronica. She hated that it took this for his voice to sound real. I'm fine, she insisted. But her body disagreed. Another contraction-like squeeze made her gasp. Robert's voice cut through everything. Call an ambulance. Now. Celine stepped back, shaken. This isn't because of me. Robert rounded on her. Not another word. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Too far. Not fast enough. Anthony moved toward Veronica, instinct overriding ego. Let me. Robert blocked him. No. Veronica gripped the older cashier's hand, tears finally spilling freely. It's too early. You're okay, the woman whispered. Breathe with me. Anthony's voice cracked. Veronica, please. She looked at him. Really looked at him. And in that moment of pain, vulnerability stripped everything fake away. Don't touch me, she whispered. The words weren't loud, but they cut deeper than anything else she'd said all day. If you've ever had to choose between your peace and someone who only shows up when there's an audience, choose your peace, even when it hurts. The sirens grew louder. Anthony's hands trembled. Robert crouched slightly in front of Veronica, calm but firm. Look at me. Focus on my voice. She nodded, breathing unevenly. Celine stood frozen, mascara beginning to streak. Her phone buzzed again. Another notification. Another headline. Another comment was tearing her apart online. But none of that mattered now. Because Veronica doubled over again, this time with a cry she couldn't suppress. The ambulance screeched into the parking lot. Paramedics rushed out. How far along? One asked quickly. 34 weeks, Veronica gasped. They loaded her onto the stretcher carefully. Anthony tried to climb in after her. The paramedic blocked him. Immediate family only. I'm her husband. Veronica's eyes met the paramedic's, and she shook her head. The smallest movement. But clear. Robert stepped forward. I'll ride with her. The doors slammed shut. Sirens screamed. As the ambulance pulled away, Anthony stood frozen in the flashing red light. Celine whispered, shaken. What have you done? Anthony didn't answer. Because for the first time, he wasn't calculating. He was scared. And as the ambulance disappeared into traffic, Veronica's hand tightened over her belly again. The monitor inside beeped faster. Anthony's footsteps echoed down the sterile hospital corridor, each tap on the linoleum sounding louder than he expected. He paused outside the double doors, peeking in. Machines beeped, white sheets cradled Veronica's form, and the faint smell of antiseptic hung in the air. I just want to see her, he stammered. You don't get front row seats to consequences, Veronica said from the bed, voice thin but unwavering. Even pale and trembling from the earlier ordeal, her tone carried authority. Stay in the waiting area. Anthony's shoulders slumped. For the first time all day, the weight of his actions pressed down on him. No smirk, no bravado, just guilt. Robert sat quietly across the room in a stiff chair, hands clasped in his lap. His face, usually iron and untouchable in the boardroom, was softer here. Lines of age and regret etched deeper as he watched Veronica's chest rise and fall with labored breaths. I built an empire, he murmured, voice low, almost to himself, and failed at raising a decent daughter. Veronica, overhearing, managed a small, ironic smile through her exhaustion. Sounds familiar, she whispered. The corners of her mouth quivered, half laugh, half tear. The nurse stepped in briefly, adjusting a monitor. She's stable for now. But stress can be very dangerous this late in pregnancy. Anthony swallowed hard, trying to find words, but Robert's sharp glance stopped him. He sank into a chair, silent, watching, feeling helpless for the first time in decades. The waiting room was tense yet quiet, punctuated only by the low hum of ventilators and the faint squeak of the nurses' shoes. An older janitor wheeled past, giving Robert a knowing nod. "Seen a lot of drama in these halls, sir," he said with a crooked grin. "But this feels personal." Robert allowed a brief smile, just a flicker, before his attention returned fully to Veronica. "You're stronger than most," he admitted. "I see it in your eyes." Veronica looked away, hands cradling her belly protectively. She thought about the hours she'd spent juggling shifts, hiding her heartache, and enduring betrayal. She thought about the money drained, the lies, the humiliation. And yet, in that sterile hospital room, something inside her shifted. A sense of being seen, recognized, even if by someone unexpected. Anthony fidgeted, his leg bouncing nervously. He started, but Robert's voice stopped him. "Shut it. You've done enough," Robert said quietly but firmly. "Now sit. Watch. Learn. And hope she survives your incompetence." Veronica's hand trembled slightly, gripping the edge of the bed. Another wave of contraction rippled through her. She gasped softly, pressing a hand to her forehead. The nurse returned, checking vitals. "Stress nearly caused premature labor," she said, eyes serious. The words landed like a punch. Robert's jaw tightened. "Do you hear that? This isn't a game. People get hurt. Real people. And you," he nodded toward Anthony, "almost caused permanent damage because of selfishness." Anthony's lips parted, words failing him entirely. Veronica turned her head toward him, exhausted but fierce. "You wanted to ruin my life, my child's life. For what? Because you couldn't be honest." The older janitor wheeled by again, shaking his head. "Kids these days," he muttered, "thinking a slap and a lie can break the world. Guess some lessons need hospital visits." Even Robert let out a chuckle at the timing. The brief comic relief hung in the tense air, grounding the moment in reality. Veronica's breaths came faster now, and the nurse checked her again, concern flashing across her face. "We need to keep monitoring. Any more stress like that and we could be looking at serious complications." Veronica's eyes flicked to Anthony one last time. "You wanted drama. You got it. But don't ever think you get to watch the consequences unfold from the front row." Robert's hand found hers gently, squeezing it. "You're not alone," he said softly. "Not now, not ever." The beep of the heart monitor filled the room like a ticking clock, a reminder of fragility, endurance, and stakes higher than any social betrayal. Anthony sank lower in the chair, staring at the floor. His world, carefully constructed from deceit, privilege, and arrogance, was crumbling. The humiliation outside the hospital had become fear inside. Fear for life. Fear for legacy. Fear for himself. Veronica's gaze softened toward her father figure ally. "Thank you," she whispered. Robert nodded. "We fight smart. We fight fair. But first, we survive today." The nurse's voice cut through the calm, urgent. "She's stabilizing, but only just." Another contraction came faster than expected. Veronica gripped the bed sheets tighter. "Please," she gasped. "Please let my baby be okay." Robert tightened his jaw, eyes blazing with resolve. "No one, no selfish, cowardly man, will touch her while I'm here." Anthony looked up at him, finally seeing the man he had feared, now standing squarely for Veronica, not the entitled daughter he thought would always have control. Veronica's fingers twitched, the monitor beeped faster, tension spiking. The nurse's eyes met Robert's. "We may need to prep for delivery if this continues." Veronica's eyes widened. She felt the weight of impending change, both terrifying and unavoidable. Robert leaned closer, whispering to her, "We're going to get through this. One contraction at a time." The door opened suddenly. A doctor stepped in, eyes sharp, voice grave. "Sir," he said, addressing Robert, "stress nearly caused premature labor. Any more, and we could have a critical situation." Veronica's breath caught in her throat. Anthony's face paled. Robert's eyes narrowed, jaw set. The tension is unbearable, the stakes sky high. 3 weeks had passed, and Veronica's apartment smelled faintly of lavender and takeout. Her feet, swollen and tucked under blankets, hadn't touched a mall floor in nearly a month. Robert's grocery deliveries were now a ritual. Fresh bread, milk, the occasional indulgent chocolate. Notes in neat handwriting. "Eat well. You're not running this world alone." She shifted in bed, wincing slightly as her belly rolled beneath her, a reminder of how fragile yet strong she had become. The hospital scare hadn't just shaken her, it had reshaped her. Mall HR now calls her directly for input on employee policies. She read through reports, pointing out where complaints had been ignored, where voices had been silenced. It was exhausting, but empowering. A knock at the door startled her. Veronica blinked. "Who?" The door opened, and a tall man in a tailored suit stepped in. Dark hair slightly tousled, sharp features, but with an air of calm authority. Richard, Robert's widowed son, lawyer and now a quiet ally in the background. "Miss Anderson," he said, handing her a neatly bound folder. "I don't rescue women. I stand beside them." Veronica raised an eyebrow. The words weren't flirtatious. They were steady, firm, reassuring. She did not need grand gestures, but something was grounding about his presence. "I thank you," she said softly, taking the folder. The weight of legal documents, custody threats, and corporate infractions suddenly felt manageable with someone competent by her side. Richard offered a small, wry smile, noting her tired eyes. "We'll handle Anthony. But first, you rest. Your focus is the baby." Veronica let out a small laugh, wincing. "It's funny. 3 weeks ago, I thought I'd be broken forever. Now I feel like I have a voice." Richard's eyes softened, almost approvingly. "Voices matter. And so do boundaries. You set both." There was a brief silence, the kind that didn't need words. Outside, a neighbor's cat meowed in protest, a reminder of life moving on, mundane and ridiculous, despite the chaos they'd been through. Veronica flipped through the folder, scanning documents and drafts. The mall's HR had implemented several immediate changes based on her notes. Policies rewritten, executive warnings issued. And, surprisingly, Robert had fired the executive who ignored repeated harassment reports. She let out a long breath, leaning back on the pillows. Finally, people who take responsibility. About time. She chuckled faintly, imagining the executive's smug face now replaced with panic. Richard nodded, handing her a water bottle. "Justice isn't dramatic. It's deliberate. And it's effective." Veronica smiled, feeling a strange mix of relief, amusement, and something deeper, trust. This wasn't romance like the movies. It was respect, earned attention, and partnership. They discussed strategies for the mall, for Anthony, and for Veronica's well-being. Each plan, each legal note, built a sense of momentum. Veronica could feel it, her power returning piece by piece. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. She looked down, heart sinking. The notification read, "Custody filing received. Anthony seeks temporary guardianship." Her hands trembled as she stared at the screen. Richard saw immediately, his jaw tightening. "He's escalating," he said quietly. "But we'll counter it, strategically." Veronica swallowed hard. Her world was calm now, restored, nurtured, funny in its little absurdities. But Anthony's latest move was a reminder, the battle wasn't over. Not yet. Veronica clenched the folder in her lap. "So it begins again," she whispered, voice steady despite the spike of fear. Richard's hand rested briefly on the edge of the bed, steadying. "And this time we fight smart. Together." Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the city skyline. Veronica's pulse raced, The calm of the past weeks collided with the looming storm. The atmosphere felt like a mix of relief and suspense, the sweetness of progress shadowed by an impending threat. She took a deep breath, setting her jaw. "Bring it on," she muttered. Veronica sat stiffly in the polished courtroom chair, her belly barely fitting under the edge of the table. The air smelled faintly of paper, perfume, and nervous tension. Cameras weren't allowed, but whispers carried. Staff, shoppers, even a few journalists had found their way inside. This wasn't just a legal battle. It was the reckoning. Anthony shifted in his chair across the room, glowering like a storm cloud. He had lost control of everything he thought he owned. His joint account drained, his access revoked, his social image crumbling. Veronica's heart beat fast, not from fear, but from the sheer energy of standing on her own ground. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through the pretense, tapped the gavel. "We're here to determine custody, financial obligations, and misconduct." Her eyes flicked to the mistress, who tried to smirk, holding back tears of indignation. Veronica's voice was steady, controlled, but charged. "I am not asking for revenge. I am asking for peace. For myself and my child. For respect where it has been denied." The courtroom held its breath. The words weren't just legal, they were a message to anyone who had ever been silenced, cheated, or drained by someone they trusted. A collection of text messages flashed on the courtroom screen. Anthony's hidden manipulations, demands, and dismissive cruelty. The mistress tried to interject, her voice cracking. "Sir," the judge barked, pointing at Robert, who had been quietly observing. "This isn't a soap opera. Although it's close." The courtroom broke into small, muffled laughs. Even Veronica couldn't help the corner of her mouth twitching into a smile. Robert Lawson leaned slightly forward, his eyes warm on Veronica. The old wealth, the business power, now merged with genuine protection. He whispered under his breath, enough for Veronica to hear. "You did it right. You held yourself together." Veronica glanced at Richard, who handed her a water bottle with a nod, wordlessly reinforcing that she wasn't alone. The subtle respect, the earned trust, the partnership, they were all here, a quiet contrast to Anthony's desperate fury. Celine fumed silently as her father's disapproval was made public. He had shut down her inheritance, siding entirely with Veronica. Every ounce of arrogance crumbled in the courtroom. The judge leaned back, hands steepled. "Based on evidence presented, and the emotional and financial welfare of the child, I rule in favor of the plaintiff, Miss Anderson. Custody, financial security, and protection are granted immediately." Gasps, small cheers, and the sound of relief rippled through the room. Veronica let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them away, standing for a moment in quiet triumph. Then came the storm outside. Anthony had been served notices that morning. He'd lost his job publicly, his image shredded, his authority gone. He stormed out of the courthouse, a blend of rage and desperation, lashing out at the cameras and anyone in his path. Veronica watched the fury with a strange mix of pity and vindication. "Some people never learn," she whispered to herself. The pain of betrayal, the triumph of standing strong, and the natural justice of consequences finally catching up. Richard placed a hand briefly on her shoulder. "It's over for now," he said. "But keep your guard. Some storms linger longer than others." Celine's shrieks and Anthony's yells faded into the distance, but the message lingered. Veronica had reclaimed her power, and anyone who doubted the cost of manipulation had witnessed it publicly. Outside, Anthony's rage turns unpredictable. The courthouse steps erupt into chaos as he confronts a security guard. Will he escalate further? Will Veronica's hard-won victory face a new, darker challenge? The late afternoon sun glinted off the mall's glass facade, catching every reflection of a scene spiraling into chaos. Anthony stood near the entrance, fists clenched, veins throbbing. He had been seething since the courthouse, and now he was determined to make a spectacle. Shoppers stopped, phones raised, the tension palpable. "Veronica, you can't do this. "I'm your husband," he yelled, voice cracking, high-pitched with rage and desperation. Veronica, seated on a bench outside the cafe with her belly heavily rounded at 8 months, didn't flinch. She had steel in her posture, though her chest heaved slightly with exhaustion. Beside her, Richard calmly adjusted his jacket, the calm in his stance contrasting with Anthony's storm. "You need to step back, sir," Richard said evenly, voice low but carrying authority. "This ends now, peacefully or legally." Anthony's eyes darted between Veronica and Richard, his anger morphing into disbelief. "Who are you to tell me? Who am I?" Richard interrupted. "I'm the guy who doesn't rescue women. I stand beside them." Veronica let herself chuckle softly, a nervous release after months of tension. "Funny, isn't it?" she said, voice trembling but firm. "Funny how loud people get when the money leaves." The shoppers tittered, a ripple of quiet amusement spreading, the comic relief cutting through the chaos. Before Anthony could retaliate, a deep, commanding voice boomed from behind them. "Anthony, step aside." Robert Lawson emerged, his figure towering, posture unyielding. "Effective immediately, I'm establishing an employee protection fund in Veronica Anderson's name. Every employee will know they are safe, heard, and respected. And you," he said, eyes narrowing at the mistress, "have been cut off entirely. Every privilege you assumed was yours is revoked." Celine's face went pale. Her lips trembled as she tried to argue, but the words faltered. Robert's gaze was absolute. Power, authority, and moral clarity all in one. Veronica felt a rush of gratitude and relief. The weight she had carried, the silent exhaustion of months, began to lift. She allowed herself a brief, human smile. Richard handed her a water bottle, and the two shared a quiet nod of mutual respect, not flirtation, just partnership and support. Anthony, however, wasn't finished. He lunged forward, voice rising, trying to shout over the murmuring crowd. Security stepped in immediately, forming a barrier, but Anthony's desperation was clear. He wasn't just angry, he was unraveling. Veronica felt a sharp pain in her abdomen and doubled over slightly. "Richard," she gasped. Richard's eyes widened. "Veronica." Robert, seeing the sudden shift, barked at security. "Call an ambulance. Now." Shoppers and staff began gathering, whispering, phones recording again, but this time Veronica wasn't the victim. She was the center of awe. Mothers, grandmothers, women in their 50s and 60s who had endured similar trials in their youth could feel it. The courage, the vindication, the sheer humanity of standing up and being protected by those who truly mattered. Veronica gritted her teeth through the pain, her hands on her belly. The crowd fell silent, the dramatic escalation now sharply personal. Richard knelt beside her, calm and steady, holding her hand. "Breathe with me," he said. "You're not alone. You've never been alone." Celine screamed in frustration, trying to interrupt, but security held firm. Anthony's rage transformed into panic, the last shred of public control slipping from his hands. Veronica's eyes met the crowd's, and she spoke softly but clearly, almost to herself, almost to them. "This is what it feels like when standing up doesn't just protect you, it protects everyone who comes after you." The call to action was not just legal, but emotional. Stand up, demand respect, and never let abusers dictate your life. Then the pain intensified. Veronica's breath hitched. "It's happening," she gasped. The ambulance sirens wailed closer. Veronica's hand clutched Richard's, the crowd holding its collective breath. Was this labor going to happen in the chaos? Could she safely bring her baby into a world where justice was finally taking its stand, but danger still lingered? The delivery room was filled with the steady beeping of monitors, the soft shuffle of nurses, and the sharp scent of antiseptic. Veronica's hand gripped Richard's, knuckles white, sweat glistening on her brow. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but relief and triumph coursed through her veins. "She's here," the nurse announced, lifting a tiny pink bundle. The baby girl let out a strong cry, and Veronica's eyes welled up. Richard's hand tightened around hers. "She's perfect," he whispered. Robert Lawson stepped forward, tears threatening to fall as he cradled Veronica's daughter. "She slapped the wrong woman," he said, voice deep with both amusement and pride. Veronica, still catching her breath, managed a weary but victorious smile. "No," she said softly, her eyes glinting. "She slapped the right one." The comic timing landed, even in the hospital. Nurses chuckled quietly, and a young intern whispered to another, "I didn't expect that in HR drama today." The tension of the past months, the betrayal, the humiliation, the public spectacle, began to unravel in her mind. Anthony's schemes, Celine's greed, their power plays, all seemed so small compared to the life in her arms. The emotional spike hit fully: relief, justice, survival, and the triumph of courage. Fast forward 6 months. Veronica walked through the lobby of the mall. She had once only swept and stocked, now with the confidence of someone who had reclaimed not just her life but her voice. Employees greeted her with smiles. Whispers of admiration followed her. She had been promoted to corporate HR director, and the Employee Rights Foundation she had begun consulting on was now officially launched, standing as a legacy of protection and fairness. Richard walked quietly beside her, professional, supportive, never overshadowing her light. Their partnership had grown not from romance, but from mutual respect and trust, the kind the audience craved, the kind earned over trials and shared victories. From the corner, Robert Lawson watched, proud, the quiet patriarch who had learned that loyalty and courage mattered more than blind family allegiance. The mall thrummed with life, an emblem of the full circle payoff: survival, justice, and human dignity honored. Veronica stopped for a moment, addressing a small gathering of employees, women who reminded her of herself months ago, young and burdened. "Some women break," she said, her voice carrying with conviction, "but some women build." She paused, letting it settle, letting them feel the weight of her truth. Outside the glass doors, the city hummed, unaware of the private victories inside. Veronica carried not just her child, but a story that would ripple far beyond these walls, a story of justice, resilience, and the unshakable courage it takes to rise when the world has tried to push you down. The mall shimmered in the afternoon sun, bustling with life, while Veronica's laughter, light, victorious, human, echoed softly, a promise that even in chaos, dignity and strength endure. Veronica's gaze lingered on the horizon. Challenges would come, but the woman who once endured slaps, betrayal, and public shame now stood unbroken. This story isn't just entertainment. It's a reminder: stand firm, protect yourself, and build, not just for yourself, but for every woman who will follow.